Welcome to our orientation series of podcasts at the University of Ottawa Law School. And I'm joined today by Adam Dodek, who is the dean, the new dean, as I record this, at the University of Ottawa Common Law section. Welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Thanks very much, Craig. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Adam, I thought we might cover a few issues that will be of interest to our incoming class of students. The first might be a little bit about yourself. How did you become dean, and what's your background in legal education?
Sure. Well, I've been teaching at the University of Ottawa since 2008. Before that, I taught at Osgoode Hall Law School, and I taught at the University of Toronto, each for a year. And before that, I worked in government and also worked in private practice before I entered legal education. And for me, I wanted to become dean here at the University of Ottawa because I was a faculty member, because I saw all the great things that our students and our faculty members and our alumni were doing, and I wanted to have the opportunity to lead those groups and to really to tell their stories and to help to provide more opportunities for our students and for our faculty members and to link them up with our alumni and with the legal community.
Well, Adam, you've skated away from describing yourself to your vision, and I for the purposes, and you're a modest man, so I feel the need to inform our listeners that if Adam's awards were in the form of medals on the chest of Russian generals, he would be weighed down to the point where he probably couldn't get out of his chair. You're an incredibly accomplished scholar, recognized widely within the profession. Not just legal academia, but within the profession. And of course, your speciality is legal ethics, but more generally public law, where you've done a substantial amount of work over the years, including, by the way, on the textbook that if your first-year public law instructors have any sense, you'll be using.
That would be 4Cs and Dodek.
Just in case there was any doubt.
Cases and materials.
You also were in private practice for a while.
I was. I feel, again, very privileged that I had the opportunity to work in private practice, in government, in the courts, in both in the U.S. and in Canada, and also to clerk at the Supreme Court of Israel, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in Pasadena, California, and then for the Supreme Court of Canada. So I've really been fortunate to have experience in a number of countries and to have experience both in the public sector and the private sector before becoming a legal academic, and I really have tried to bring that experience to bear in my teaching, in my research, and now as dean of the law school.
And so that background, both in private practice and then in legal academia, gives you an excellent overview of the nature of legal education, its prospects, its virtues, its challenges. Do you have thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I guess my thoughts are there's a lot of pressure these days on law schools, in a sense, to do it all for law students. There used to be more of a partnership between law schools and the bar in terms of training future lawyers. That partnership is still quite strong in other provinces, but unfortunately, from my perspective, that's broken down in Ontario. And so now there's not much formal training that the Law Society does for legal graduates. There's still, of course, articling. Articling is largely unregulated, and students have great articling experiences, and unfortunately, some students have quite negative articling experiences, and other students are unable to get articles. All of this puts more and more pressure on law schools, and you hear these days some lawyers in the profession say that law schools are not doing a good job producing quote unquote practice ready lawyers. And that's something that I really strongly push back against because I don't think that it's our mission to produce practice ready lawyers. And I think that is flawed for two reasons. First of all, if that's what law schools should be doing, then they probably shouldn't be at universities. They should be run by the bar the way that they were 50, 60, 70 years ago. And frankly, people like you and I are probably not the right people to be doing that. But more to the point, the other reason why I think that's flawed is I think that what we're really good at and what we should be aspiring to is not turning out people who are ready to practice law on day one, but people who we have done a good job preparing for a profession and for a career. And we know that we live in a time of tremendous change in society, tremendous technological change, tremendous demographic change. We live in a globalized world. And the reality is, what lawyers are doing on today, many of those jobs are not going to exist in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. So if we were training lawyers to be ready to practice in day one, I think we would be condemning a lot of them to be obsolete in year 3 or year 5. So I really think our mission is help train people, give them the skills to be able to practice law, to do other things over the course of a profession and a career. So my trajectory for legal education here at the University of Ottawa is not first 5 years. It's really 20, 30, 40 years.
In fact, that's certainly consistent with my own experience. I was in private practice, as you know, in the early 2000s, and in Washington. I practiced in the United States as well. And since that time, a lot of the functions that were performed by junior associates have now been absolutely outsourced, either outsourced to cheap labor in some form or another, or outsourced to mechanical means of, for example, document discovery. And so had my law school trained me for the sort of high volume work that was then associated with junior lawyers, I would have been absolutely ill-equipped, both frankly to add much to my firm, because even at that time there was a transition, but also certainly by now I would have had to retool several times over. And so I agree with you. I mean, not surprisingly, I suppose we're both in the same mission, that the purpose of the law school is, in fact, to allow people to reinvent themselves and to give themselves the capacity and tools to reinvent themselves over the course of a career. And so the building blocks are so essential. And so let me ask then, take the conversation down from the level of the profession to this institution, the Common Law section at the University of Ottawa, where students are earning their JD degrees. What is the role and how do we accomplish the sorts of functions that you've described in terms of training, not practice ready, but practice capable, reinventing and retooling lawyers of the future?
Sure. So I would start with what we in legal education, whether it's here at the University of Ottawa or really at any other law school in Ontario or Canada, do well, and why lawyers have always been in demand, or people with a legal education have been in demand and will continue to be in demand regardless of the changes in law in society. And that's because the fundamental strength of legal education is in problem solving and analytical reasoning. And I just came back from a 2-day retreat where people from the public sector and the private sector were talking about their workforces, whether that's, again, the Government of Canada with over 300,000 employees, or the high-tech sector in Canada North, and the sort of skills that they were talking about: problem solving, analytical reasoning. Those are things that we have always done well and will continue to do well, and that will position our students for many opportunities, both in the legal sector and outside of it. Building on that, what are other things that in particular we do well here and have done well? Conflict resolution, negotiation, mediation. We were one of the first schools over 15 years ago, now close to 20 years ago, to institute a mandatory first-year program in dispute resolution. That's what, those are the sorts of skills that, again, legal employers and employers generally are looking for. Legal writing. We like to say here that lawyers are professional writers. And about 5 years ago, Professor Ellen Zweibel founded a legal writing academy, and we built that really from nothing to a very, very high level, to the point that our students are getting known as, if you go to the University of Ottawa, you're going to have a very solid education in legal writing. That's obviously something that is critically important in the legal sector, but strong writing skills, strong communication skills through oral advocacy, through our internationally renowned mooting program, those are skills that will transfer far beyond the legal sector. In terms of where we're going as a law school, when I became dean and was reflecting back on our successful students and what we do well here, to me it came back to one fundamental element or characteristic, and that's leadership. I think we've done a really good job in the common law section of producing strong leaders. And the idea that lawyers and law students are leaders, whether that means as managing partners of a law firm, whether that means running an NGO here in Ottawa or in Toronto or in London or Geneva, whether that means being an Indigenous leader, being a business leader, being a politician, or if you're a sole practitioner, you are a leader. You are an entrepreneur. You have to get out there, hustle for business, make yourself known. And the more and more, if we can focus on leadership skills and empower our students to give them the tools that they will need to succeed, regardless of what they choose to do, then I think the more successful we will be as a law school, and the more successful our graduates will be.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.